This exercise is called a hip flexor hurdle. So I'm going to take a kettlebell or a dumbbell or a water bottle, could be almost anything. I'm going to place it outside of my leg. I'm going to sit against a wall, and I want to sit pretty straight. The straighter I sit, the harder this is going to be. And then I'm going to basically point my toes straight up, and I'm going to lift my leg with a straight knee, and then I'm going to come up and over that kettlebell and back down with control. And then I'm going to come up and over and return. And so what we're doing here is we're working hip flexor strength and control of the hip as it's moving into flexion. A lot of times when people have really tight hips, they're just focusing on stretching the crap out of their hips. And so that can actually make the muscle too long, and it loses proprioception or it becomes weaker, and the weaker muscle can actually be stiff. It has a little spasm in there, a microspasm, as a protective response. And so if we can get a muscle that feels tight stronger, then it can actually relax, and it doesn't need to hold on to this hypertonicity all of the time. And so often when I'm rehabbing somebody with hip flexor pain, a painful hip joint, hip impingement is kind of a wastebasket term. One of the check boxes that we always want to hit is doing some hip flexor strengthening, and this is often a go-to. So I'm going to sit tall, lift up and over, and back down. If that's too tall, I can just put, let's say I got a piece of tape there, I can just come up, maybe you can just get up and over the tape, and that's all we got. And then gradually you can lift higher and higher. And then eventually I can start to work further into my range of abduction. So I can have this a little further away from me, and now I'm gonna get lift up and over and come over, oh, and then that's pretty dang tough, and then come back. I wanna roughly keep my foot up, or my toes straight up. I can bias different muscles by rotating. So most people, if they rotate in, they're gonna feel kind of locked up. You're gonna fire up the TFL, and it's probably not going to be as comfortable. The TFL in most people is pretty dang strong, actually. If we come this way, we're going to work a little more adductor, which often is stronger than the psoas and the pectineus, some of the true hip flexors, the rectus femoris. And so I find most people need the most work with their foot completely vertical there. So I'm going to come up and over and try and keep it vertical the whole way. So that's the hip flexor hurdle. Typically we program these in sets of 10 to 15 reps on each side. And then we start with something low. I can even lay that on its side or use a dumbbell, and then progress to higher and further. And so give this one a shot. It's pretty dang tough. If you need to make it easier, you can lean back a little bit. So if I lean back, I can access a little more hip flexor range here. But here, now I'm locked in at 90 degrees, and I'm really working at this really challenging range of the hip. And so if you need to, you can kind of lean back to start, but I always want to be progressing to try to be totally vertical there. So that's a hip flexor hurdle. Give it a shot. Let me know how it goes.